You know, people said it couldn't be done. It would be too big and bulky. It would be too expensive. It would generate too much heat. Too much heat? It's not possible yet, people said. You'd need a really powerful computer just to edit the files. It'd be too difficult, they said. It's just not realistic. It's just not realistic. It's just not realistic. It's just not realistic to expect a small, affordable 8K consumer 360 camera anytime soon. And Insta360 said, yeah, maybe you're right. It probably is too difficult. But that's not going to stop us, obviously. And here it is, the camera that a lot of us have been waiting for, hoping for the past few years. It looks a lot like the X3, but it's a bit taller, a bit thicker, and a bit heavier. It has a larger, higher resolution display, and that display is stronger now that it's protected by Gorilla Glass. Speaking of protection, our prayers have been answered with these removable lens protectors. This is going to make some of you and me very happy. It comes with a pair of, I think they're polycarbonate lens protectors in the box, and you can purchase these tempered glass ones separately. Now keep in mind that the lens protectors might affect the image quality. Depending on the location of the sun or other light sources, you might get a bit more glare. I'll be doing a proper comparison of the standard and premium lens protectors in the next few days, and if you're doing something with which there's a risk of dropping your X4, it's well worth keeping the lens protectors on. Trust me. Oh no. And on the same theme of protection, it's waterproof down to 10 meters. The back has a really nice new rubberized texture for improved grip, and of course there's the USB-C port, power button, quick button, removable battery, and a tripod socket. Just like the X3, the X4 takes 72 megapixel photos, and it has a feature called Pure Shot built in, which they say is AI driven. It basically stitches and cleans up the image in camera, and they look great. The headline feature is that it can now record in 8K resolution. That's 7680 by 3840 pixels. So what does this mean and why is it a big deal? Well, the X3 could record at 5.7K, which was 5760 by 2880 pixels. Multiply those numbers together and we get 16.5 million pixels. But that's stretched over a big sphere. After we reframe and export the file, we're left with roughly 1080p. The X4 has 29.5 million pixels, which is 78% more than the X3. And so now when we reframe and export, we get a file that's roughly 2.7K. I think it's actually higher than that if you zoom out a little bit when reframing, but we'll call it 2.7K. When I compare footage from the X3 and X4, the difference in detail and clarity is immediately visible. And so the video looks a lot better now, and this is the first time I've seen footage from a consumer 360 camera that looks as good as modern action camera footage. being 360, there are some pretty significant advantages over an action camera, like the selfie stick is invisible and it captures everything around you so that later you can frame the action and change the field of view to whatever you like. And of course, you can get really creative and make some really interesting shots. Something I love doing is holding the camera on a selfie stick above my head and then zooming way out to make it look like a drone shot. And this is just with a normal short selfie stick. With a longer one, it's even crazier. The X3 already had rock-solid stabilization, and I honestly don't think it could really get all that much better. The X4 continues to provide the most stable footage I've seen from any camera, even the Pocket 3, so stabilization is top-notch. Single lens mode is intended to let you use the X4 like an ordinary action cam. It records from one side only, the front or the back, and it gives you ready-to-use files straight out of the camera. No need to process them in the software as you do with the 360 files. The max resolution is 4K 60, and there's no horizon leveling, but if you switch it to free frame mode, you can get the full 360-degree horizon leveling, as well as the option to change the aspect ratio and field of view. But you'll need to process the files in the software and export them. Me mode takes some of the hassle out of using 360 cameras. With this mode, there's no need to process the files in any software. You just hold the camera out on a selfie stick and it'll record whatever's on the other end of the stick. It automatically stitches the video from the two lenses together in camera, ready to upload to social media or drop into your editor. And there are various frame rates that go all the way up to 120 FPS at 2.7K. The X4 allows us to play with time by slowing it down. In 360 mode, we can now record at 5.7K 60 FPS, which is quite a big upgrade from before, and something that I know a lot of people will be excited about. And it gives us a smooth 50% reduction in playback speed. Another way to get slow motion is to use Me mode and set it to 2.7K 120. Another is to put it in single lens mode and set it to 4K 60. And finally, there's bullet time, where you swing it around your head and strangers in the distance wonder if you're having some kind of mental crisis or if perhaps you're just a terrorist. And a quick note about bullet time. By default, the files will export as 30 frames per second with the slow motion baked in, but if you export them at 120 frames per second and then slow them down to 30 in your video editor, you'll actually get ultra slow motion by way of interpolation baked into the files. That's pretty cool. Another way the X4 allows us to play with time is by speeding it up. Time-lapses can now be captured at 11K resolution, which is a step up from the 8K of the X3. There's also time shift mode, which is like hyperlapse, and it allows you to walk around and then smoothly speed up the journey. Now let's do an audio test of the X4. The camera's about a foot, maybe a foot and a half away from my face. And unfortunately in the distance there's some loud heavy machinery doing something. But there's still birds tweeting and it's still a beautiful winter morning. A sad thing happened yesterday. I was using the X4 without the lens protectors on and I dropped it onto tarmac and I've damaged one of the lenses. And I haven't finished my video yet, which is a bit of a problem. Now I've got my AirPods Pro 2 connected to the X4, which is a really nice feature because you can be a bit further away from the camera and it'll still pick up your voice quite well. The range isn't amazing on the earbuds. You'll notice it when I get to maybe 25 or 30 feet away, it starts to get a bit garbled and basically becomes unusable. This is about, I think, about 40 feet or so. So I'll come a bit closer and you should start to hear
the audio improving, and then when I get to about this distance, sounds pretty good.
This is a camera that does best in well-lit scenarios. It's designed for high-resolution 360 video, not for low-light shooting. It has a high pixel density, making the pixels relatively small, which is great for getting that high resolution, but not ideal for dark situations. But I always do a low-light test for every camera I review, so that in the future I can compare them. So I went to one of the usual places I test my cameras for low-light, expecting terrible results. And actually, it did so much better than I expected. Way better than my Action 2. Way better than my GoPro. And here are some low-light photos. Use the manual controls for best results. The X4 now has a bigger battery and a claimed 67% increased recording time. Insta360 warned me that because of the power required to shoot at 8K, the recording times would be reduced and the camera might overheat. But in my first test indoors at 8K 30 at room temperature, I got an hour and 15 minutes before the battery died, and it didn't overheat. In my second test at the same 8K 30, it lasted for an hour and 5 seconds before it reached 57 degrees C and shut down with an overheat warning. At 5.7K 30, I got 2 hours and 18 minutes from the battery, and the temperature stayed below 30 degrees. Something I've been using a lot is gesture control. Hold your hand up to start recording, hold it up again to stop. When the camera's on the end of a selfie stick, it's just like having a remote control. You can also give the peace symbol to take a photo, though I didn't find it to be as reliable. Sometimes it would either not detect it, or it would think I was giving the gesture for video. There's also voice control, but that's a bit more embarrassing to use in public. Another thing I like is being able to connect AirPods and use them as a wireless microphone. Editing the videos can be done in the desktop studio or the smartphone app. There's also a plugin for Premiere Pro so you can edit directly in post. The smartphone app has the most features, but I'm just not a smartphone app kind of person. I'm a mouse and keyboard guy, so I prefer the desktop studio, and the latest version has quite a lot of upgrades. I was worried that my 7-year-old computer with its GTX 1070 graphics card wouldn't be able to handle the 8K files, but to my surprise, it was actually no problem at all. I'm not sure what magic their software is doing behind the curtains, but it was just as easy to work with the 8K files as it was for the 5.7K files. There are two small things that I'm slightly disappointed with. One is they got rid of the vibration motor. The X3 would vibrate when it starts and stops recording, and it was strong enough to feel on the end of a selfie stick, and that was really useful. But unfortunately now it's gone. And the other dislike is something really tiny, and one I'm sure they could fix with firmware. On the X4, when I'm scrolling through the menu, if I don't choose a mode within 2 seconds, it disappears. And that's not so bad once you're familiar with what all the features do. But 2 seconds isn't long enough for me to read the description underneath each mode icon. I actually feel anxious when I'm scrolling through. On the X3, the menu would stay where it was until you press the icon, and I wish the X4 was the same. Those are my only two complaints. People who are just getting into 360 cameras might not realize just how far we've come. The first 360 camera I ever bought was the Insta360 X4. I loved it for a while because of the creative potential that it offered, but the quality just wasn't good enough for me to want to use in any project. Then came the One X, then the X2, then the X3, which I really liked and still really like. But the X4 is the first version where I can drop the footage from it into the same timeline as footage from my other action cameras, and no one will know it came from a 360 camera, because the resolution is up there now. The footage isn't quite as nice as a 4K action camera, but it's really close. And because it can record in full 360 as well as the single lens mode, it can do so much more than an ordinary action camera can. It's an incredibly useful and fun piece of gear to have around. If you want to buy the X4 and you feel like supporting what I do, you can use the affiliate link below. If you find this useful or interesting, I'd really appreciate a thumbs up. And if you aren't subscribed and you like this kind of stuff, maybe you'll consider subscribing. You're more than welcome to join the discussion in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the X4. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.